Aloha, I'm Carolyn Tanaka and welcome to Live at the Ledge. Every week we will be meeting with members of the House of Representatives to talk about the topics of interest, legislation that's moving through the House. Today we have the Speaker of the House with us, Scott Saiki. Welcome, Speaker.
Good morning. Good morning, Carolyn. Thanks for having us.
Yesterday, the governor delivered his fourth State of the State to the legislature. Historically, governors have used the State of the State to talk about their achievements and to look ahead to their vision and the year ahead. Can you give us some of your general thoughts, your reaction to the governor's State of the State yesterday?
So I thought the governor gave us a very concise address yesterday. He did summarize some of his achievements from the past couple of years. Mm-hmm. He probably could have provided a little more detail on what his initiatives are for the upcoming legislative session and for the next year. There were a couple of areas in particular that I hoped he would have addressed. One was the need for more infrastructure for us to develop housing and other kinds of initiatives. Mm-hmm. Infrastructure is a big issue for the entire state. Mm-hmm. Until we have more infrastructure, we really can't move ahead with big-scale construction projects. The other area that I wish he had hoped that he would have addressed was regarding his support for STEM and tech programs. The governor didn't mention or reaffirm his support for the TMT project on the Big Island. That's a big issue because if TMT fails, then it will jeopardize the astronomy program in our state, and I'm not sure that that's where we want to go with astronomy. But I'm also pleased that we did line up with the governor. The House lined up with the governor on a couple of areas. One was affordable housing construction, and the other is homelessness.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more in detail, housing and homelessness. The state's working on it, the city's been working on it, administration's been working on it. How will the House approach the problem of homelessness? What are some of the things that you're looking at?
So as we all know, housing is a very big ticket item. It's an expensive item. It's not going to happen overnight. So we need to prioritize and spend our dollars wisely. The House is prepared to scrutinize projects that are being proposed by different government agencies to see which ones are viable and should be funded and can begin to be funded this year. So we're basically going to look at a list of potential projects to see which ones make sense. Mm-hmm. And what we can afford. So several of these projects are aimed at the affordable group, affordable rentals, and so that's hopefully something that we can fund this year, begin to fund.
What about, I know we talk a lot about affordable housing. What about housing for working families, the middle class?
So those are some of the projects that we'll be looking at. There are proposals within the urban core, especially along the rail line. TOD is an area that the state needs to focus on. We need to make sure that we are planning for TOD development. TOD is one of the reasons why rail was built on Oahu. It was to spur mixed-use development extending from the leeward side into urban Honolulu.
So is that approach something, looking at the TOD and how it fits into the whole housing issue, is that an approach that is unique to the House at this point? I mean, nobody else has looked at it that way?
So if we're going to have affordable housing, we have to realize that there has to be mixed-use development because the mixed use will help to subsidize the cost of the affordable housing construction. You can't just have affordable housing construction. It's too expensive.
The governor did talk a lot in his State of the State. Obviously, he did talk about his accomplishments in home housing. Are you satisfied with the progress that they've made in that area, or is there something that the legislature can do or will be doing to move it along either quicker or more efficiently?
Right, so as I mentioned earlier, one of the areas we have to focus on is infrastructure, because even if we want to build high-rise affordable housing in certain areas, we cannot, because there is a lack of sewer capacity and other kinds of infrastructure needs. And for example, in the Mayor Wright area in the Civic Center, there is a proposal to build a multi-use complex, but that can't happen until there's sufficient sewer capacity. That's the case in areas such as the McCully area, where there's a lack of sewer capacity. So even if we want to build, we cannot at this point.
We're looking at long term then here.
Some of this is long term, but we have to begin now by making decisions on infrastructure and projects that are viable.
You, in your opening day speech, you talked about your view of the role of the legislature moving forward. Can you expand on that a little bit? What role do you see the legislature playing?
So the legislature needs to assert itself as the policymaker in our state. The legislature is the body, not the executive and not the courts, that has a duty to set policy and priorities for the state of Hawaii. And it's something that each and every legislator needs to fully comprehend. We set policy not just through enactment of laws, but through our passage of the state budget, our approval of the state budget, because the budget document sets priorities for the state. We have the opportunity to shape programs, to prioritize programs. We can do a lot of things if we set our mind to it. So it's just really important for us to realize that we set policy and that we need to be pretty aggressive about doing that, especially in this day and age.
Okay. You did say that I think you charged your colleagues in the House with being more activists than just watching everything move by.
Right, so it's pretty clear that the status quo is not working and that the public is frustrated with the status quo. I will say that the legislature, I'm sure, is also frustrated with the status quo and that we need to make changes. We just need to be creative and be bold.
So I guess, can we expect a pretty, at least on the House side in the majority caucus, a fairly active, engaged, ready to move legislature?
I'm pretty sure when you look at the House has always, I think, traditionally been the more robust body in the legislature. You have younger and more energetic members in the House. We have a solid leadership team. We have some solid committee chairs and newer members. And I believe that working with the minority caucus, we're going to do some good things this year.
Good. We'll have you back on, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and see how much progress we've made. Thank you, Speaker,
Thanks.
for being with us today, and thank you to all of you. See you next week.
Live at the Legislature is a live half-hour weekly news program that focuses on the issues, legislation, and topics of importance emerging from this year's legislative session. Each week, state senators and representatives provide a variety of perspectives on the issues from both sides of the aisle. Tune in to Live at the Legislature weekly to get exclusive updates on what's happening in Hawaii's legislature.
Do you know your legislators? Visit capitol.hawaii.gov and enter your street name to find detailed information about your representatives and senators. From your district number to the committees and current bills your legislators have introduced, this is an easy way to stay up to date with what is happening in your community. If you're looking for detailed information concerning Hawaii State Senate and House hearings, please visit olelo.org/gov-archives. Videos are arranged by date, with the most recent at the top of the list.
Are you looking for an easy way to get involved in the legislative process? Stop by the Public Access Room located in Room 401 at the Hawaii State Capitol. Open Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. in session. The Public Access Room provides citizens of Hawaii's facilities, services, and equipment to enhance their ability to participate in the legislative process. The public is welcome to track and affect legislation pending before the Hawaii State Legislature.
Good morning and welcome back to Live at the Legislature.
2 cards for applause, you guys,
My
senators.
name is Kealoha Lindsay and I'm a member of the House Minority Staff here in the Legislature. So with us are 2 guests from East Honolulu, Representative Gene Ward, who serves as the House Minority Floor Leader and is the Leader Emeritus. He represents District 17, which spans from Hawaii Kai to Kalama Valley, and Mr. Mike Goodman, who is the Director of the Hawaii Kai Homeless Task Force. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here. Good morning.
Thank you. So obviously the big news of this week is the Governor's State of the State address, and for the folks who had missed it, the Minority Caucus had a press conference immediately afterward. And so Representative Ward, can you tell us a little bit more of what the Minority Caucus's response was to the address and sort of what you had said?
If you got 8 minutes, I've got the area that I think I'm going to go above and beyond. Have you actually started this? Is the countdown? Okay. The impression of yesterday, there's 2 takeaways basically. The first takeaway is the governor missed a great opportunity. I'm talking about the state of the state, and the takeaway that I think most of the people of Hawaii have taken. The great opportunity was to take the imagery of a father who's putting his daughter in a manhole to put that aside and address the people to assure them. The elephant in the room was, what about the missile alert? And he didn't mention that, and I think he missed a great opportunity to assure people, look, it's under a study, it's under investigation, it's going to be okay. He said how beautiful Hawaii was, but in effect, how much there had to be done to assure people. I call it Hawaii PTSD. People are still out there, and they need to have closure. The governor missed that opportunity. The second takeaway was when DBED said there's 65,000 housing shortages. The governor says, well, we're going to put 100 million in and we're going to fix housing. Well, 100 million is about 250 houses. We're not even getting close to having affordable housing or assuring what otherwise is a housing crisis. And related to that is the homeless issue. If I gave out Pinocchio Awards, when he said that there were 9% decrease in homelessness, I mean, you tell that to the people of Hawaii or my constituents, it just doesn't work. Homelessness is getting worse, and we've kicked the can down the road, and I don't see any solution except possibly for alternative housing or sorts of Hawaii First housing where the homeless can actually do things. And I think that's where my good colleague to my right, Mike Goodman, will know much more in detail.
So let's transition a little bit into that. So Mike, You're the Director of the Hawaii Kai Homeless Task Force, and for the folks who are watching, tell us a little bit more about the history of the task force, your role in it, and then any initiatives that you guys are introducing this session and are pushing for.
Well, the history of the task force doesn't really matter. What matters is that we have a bill that was promulgated by Gene Ward's office and is being introduced by Tom Brower in the House and by Willis Sparrow in the Senate. And it's the Puhunua Homeless Villages Act, or the P Homeless Villages Act. And it's a groundbreaking, earth-shaking bill because it will literally end the homeless crisis throughout the entire state of Hawaii, making Hawaii the first state in the country to do so. And it will do it by creating 8,000 units of fully subsidized housing, which is enough for every homeless person in the state. And it does it by using 21st century materials and modular construction. It does it for less than $200 million, which is far less than we're already spending on the ancillary costs to the homeless crisis, managing the chaos that's out there.
So that's a bold statement to say that, you know, the bill that you're promulgating will end the homeless crisis. So for the naysayers out there, for people who, you know, doubt that this piece of legislation will do that, what do you say to them?
Prove it.
Yeah, what I say to them is this. The causes of homelessness are incredibly complex. The solution is not that complex. The solution is a place to live. It's very simple. if you have a place to live, you're no longer homeless. There's no more crisis. Would we still have a housing challenged population? Of course. Would we still have a population of people that need wraparound supportive services? Of course. No one's going to put IHS out of business. No one's going to put the Salvation Army out of business. But all of these organizations will be far more effective if everyone has a place to live. Most of these organizations are spending a lot of their energy and time jumping through hoops, trying to find their clients a place to live. This will solve that problem. It solves it because we need to get off what I call the wood, brick, and mortar road. The yellow brick and mortar road does not lead to Oz. It leads to a homeless encampment under the H1 viaduct and the park in Kaka'ako. It's a disaster. And we've been on that yellow brick and mortar road for decades right now, and it's time to get off it. The alternative housing movement, such as tiny homes, modular construction, which is what we're talking about here, is sweeping the nation and the world. And this is being promulgated and tried in many parts of the country.
And so what are some of those parts? Or what are the sort of the shining examples of the alternative housing movements?
Well, it's starting in Oregon. It's starting in Los Angeles. They're talking about it in New York and other cities on the East Coast. These are movements that are taking root all around the country. And in fact, Dionne Warwick is promoting tiny homes and is doing a tiny homes tour, which is going to, in fact, they're going to have an event here in Hawaii, I understand, in March. So this is a movement that's moving around the country, and tiny homes is just one component of it. What matters is not the particular technology that's used. What matters is getting off that wood, brick, and mortar road, because to create 8,000 units of conventional housing would cost about $3.5 billion. All right, $200 million is about 1% of that. So the argument that wood, brick, and mortar housing is nicer and this would divert money away from that is a fallacious argument. And the reason is because at most it will divert 1% of that. Even if you're talking about Kauaiki Village, which the governor touted in his address, Kauaiki Village is a wonderful place, but that's not for the hardcore homeless. Kauaiki Village costs about $725 a month for one bedroom, about $925 a month for a two-bedroom, and it runs about $250,000 a unit. If you were to extrapolate that to house every homeless person in the state with lots of Kauaiki villages, you're talking about $2 billion. It's just not happening.
Okay. And we've got a little less than a minute left. So Rep. Ward, we just heard the speaker say that he looks forward to working with the Minority Caucus to move forward, this pieces of legislation. So what are some of, really quickly, the priorities of the Minority Caucus and where you see that you can agree with the majority?
Well, from my standpoint, in working off the homeless issue, is that the highest homeless population is the Hawaiian community. And there are 203,000 acres that we've given to DHHL. But after 100 years, we've given only 9,700 leases, and we got 27,000 on the wait list. I'd like to see the Speaker give $28 million, which the courts have said that they deserve.
Okay. And thank you for your time, gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Live at the Legislature is a live half-hour weekly news program that focuses on the issues, legislation, and topics of importance emerging from this year's legislative session. Each week, state senators and representatives provide a variety of perspectives on the issues from both sides of the aisle. Tune in to Live at the Legislature Weekly to get exclusive updates on what's happening in Hawaii's legislature.
Are you looking for an easy way to get involved in the legislative process? Stop by the Public Access Room located in Room 401 at the Hawaii State Capitol. Open Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. in session. The Public Access Room provides citizens of Hawaii's facilities, services, and equipment to enhance their ability to participate in the legislative process. The public is welcome to track and affect legislation pending before the Hawaii State Legislature.
Do you know your legislators? Visit capital.hawaii.gov and enter your street name to find detailed information about your representatives and senators. From your district number to the committees and current bills your legislators have introduced, this is an easy way to stay up to date with what is happening in your community. If you're looking for detailed information concerning Hawaii State Senate,
Welcome to Live at the Legislature. I'm Jill Kuramoto, and every week we talk with Hawaii's state senators about the events and issues that are taking place right here at the Capitol. And this morning we have with us Senator Donna Mercado Kim. She is the District 14 Senator, and Senator Kim is the chair of the Committee on Government Operations. And also we have Senator Clarence Nishihara. He is the chair of the Committee on Public Safety, Intergovernmental, and Military Affairs. Good morning to both of you, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
And we're now into week 2 of the legislative session, and already there's been a lot of activity. So let's begin. First of all, both of you were participants in an informational briefing held on Friday in regards to the false ballistic missile threat from January 13th. I'm interested in knowing what your assessment was of this informational briefing. Was it effective? Did you get the answers you were looking for? Let's start with you, Senator Kim.
Good morning, Joe. Unfortunately, there were a lot of discussion at that meeting, but the answers, I think, were not forthcoming in the sense because there's an investigation going on that we kept hearing, well, we need to wait for the investigation. We need to wait to see what the report says. And for me, that's very troubling. I found that despite some of the changes that they said they're making so that this kind of thing will not happen again in the future, is that the internal controls seem to have been missing then, and it worries me that if we don't have a good foundation for internal controls, we're not going to have it into the future. And these controls is, procedures, operations, review, training, and you have to constantly evaluate that. And to hear that they ran that exact same test that caused that error on Saturday 26 times prior to Saturday, and there were no internal controls to check to see that they could possibly be an error, that they needed to have 2 people, they needed to have separate screens or whatever it is they needed to prevent something like that from happening. No one in the 26 times they ran it saw that. And so now to put it in, how do we know something else is not going to occur because that internal controls are not there?
Okay. Yes, and Senator Nishihara, what is your assessment?
Well, first I'd like to say it's good to see that we're alive at the the legislature today. Anyway, I concur with what Senator Kim has said in her comments. I've sat through. We all did, sitting through that a little over an hour. But it seems that the troubling things are their answers, I think, were forthcoming as they could. But it did show up the glaring errors and areas where they seem to have shortcomings, either in procedure or in the technology they used, or it seems like generally there was a little, quite a bit of chaos, not only in the public, but also within the agency as they were moving forward. And I guess you could say the same maybe at the governor's office as well. I did get an opportunity to speak to the 2 members who came from the FCC, and they did point out some of the things that they feel that were in place that the state could have used, but they didn't. So that needs to be investigated further to see why, if these technology was available, that they should have used it. The fact that they weren't aware of it shows that maybe they need to have more training themselves as to what they're using at HAIMA.
Right. Well, what sort of actions do you see going forward then at this point, Senator Kim?
Well, we were hoping that we were going to hear that, and instead we kept hearing that we got to wait till the report comes out, and that worries me. They did say that they were going to dispense with having any more of these drills until such time that they can review everything, which then brings up the question, why did we even roll out those alerts and those sirens if in fact they're not totally ready? And they really did not have a plan for the community, the businesses, the transportation system as to what happens when there's this alert. So I'm not sure what's going to be coming down from the governor's office, but we'll look forward to that.
Right.
Same question?
Yeah, well, yes. Sure.
Well, I think, I for one, I'm waiting to hear what the results of the investigation turns out. I think then we'll have a better idea in their perspective what they found that they needed to fix, what they needed to go forward and make improvements on. But it was pretty clear that outside of what happened from Diamond Head, the general public was in chaos and panic. And so it was pretty clear that when you have people doing rather crazy things like putting your kids down into a manhole, it shows that the general public was not ready for it. I did hold some public meetings, and they were given some instruction as to what they could expect to do. But in general, it looked like the vast number of people in the public truly had no idea what to do.
Okay, so maybe education is something
I
that's
think
going to
it's
definitely
important.
be
And it
part of
includes,
it, right?
right, exactly. And I think it includes bringing in the DOE into this, too, Department of Education, as well as the tourism industry as well.
Right. Okay. Well, I don't know if I can ask you this, but if you can give me a real concise answer about your assessment of the governor's State of the State address. We have less than a minute here.
Well, I've had to give speeches like that as Senate President, so I know it's difficult, but I felt that his speech was very long, on 80% on what the situation is like and what he's done, and 20% on what he's going to do and what our goals are, and I would have loved to see that flopped over where it would be 20% of what the situation is like and how good things are, and more 80% specifically on going forward and what we're going to do and what are some of the goals.
Exactly. Well, and quickly, your quick assessment of...
I ditto for her. But I think the government missed an opportunity to talk about what happened for that false alert. And I think people are wondering why he didn't mention it as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much both for being here, and thank you, viewing audience, for joining us for Live at the Legislature. You can always keep up to date on what's happening with the Senate on our HawaiiSenateMajority.com website. You can also stay up to date on all the events of the legislature at capitol.hawaii.gov. Thank you again for watching Live at the Legislature.